Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday, September 20th, North Middlesex Council meeting. At this time, I would call our meeting to order. Roll call. We do have Councillor Keogh joining us online. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anyone has any, please forward to the clerk. Seeing none at this time, minutes of the previous meetings. Any business arising? Errors or omissions? Seeing none, motion to accept the minutes. Moved by Councillor Irwin, seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. We have a delegation coming up next, and it is Ontario Clean Water Agency, and they're coming up to the table. Good evening. Do we have John with us now? I'd just like to make sure that we have Councillor Keogh. Okay, perfect. But he's with us. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Ron.
Okay, well, thank you, Your Worship, members of council and municipal staff for the opportunity to present to you tonight. We are presenting Q2 operational reports and financials. And I'd like to start off on page number 4 of the North Middlesex distribution system, where we have our maintenance and capital activities that we have listed for you to review. And it continues on to page 5, where you're going to see the percentage of work orders completed. And one of the main items I wanted to bring to your attention was the number of locates. The total is going to be on page 6, but it's going to be 918 locates that we have completed for the second quarter, which is actually representative of 1 year's worth of locates. We had 892 in 2022. We had 1,228 in 2021, and back down to about 718 for 2020. So just give you an idea of how many locates we've actually completed this year so far, which is a lot of the good work that our staff has been continuing on with the services that we provide for our water and wastewater systems. So
Rod, can I just ask you, what's the reason for the big uptake here?
fiber in a rural area. Okay. Number one, and it's probably going to continue on throughout the course remainder of the year. And I expect us to hit probably close to 2,000.
Wow. Okay.
Right now, everything is under our O&M operational contract. I have not coded or invoiced anybody else. This is something that we've been doing during our regular business hours. And it's just a combination of being creative to getting the work done, showing some innovation. And it's also myself stepping into that role of operating. I do have that background. That's where I came from. So I'm also doing that to help, get that other work done as well.
Good work. Thank you. Thank you.
If you go to page number 7, this is where we have our performance assessment report. We have a lot of flows and our parameters for quality of our water. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer if you have any more.
Questions from council? I do have one, and it's on the water tower itself. Last I heard, we had some deficiencies still to clean up for that tower. Can you tell me, is that done? And what are the deficiencies that if we're waiting for them?
Yeah, through your worship, there is deficiency that our staff still left outstanding. One of them being a main control valve, check valve, that's not working properly. The lighting, I think they're going to replace another sensor. There's a long list. I just don't have, out my head, but something that we're keeping track of and on a weekly basis, just to see where we're, continuing following up and working on that.
So are they following through on that, or is it a kind of an?
It's been slow. They are following through, but it has been slow. This deficiency list isn't new. It's been something that was identified back in October of 2022 when the water tower was commissioned.
So it's a year old now.
It's getting close to being that year. October 14th, the exact date that we commissioned it. Again, seeding or the lawn, grass cutting, fence. There's again, through your worship, there is a long list, probably about 34 items. I recall off the top of my head, but we can make that available for you to review and see what they are. And
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, because something like a valve like that not working right, that's different than grass not being seeded.
yeah, so far, all these deficiencies are not preventing our tower to operate the way that it should. It's not a liability. It's not put us into emergency conditions. It is a valve, though, that is passing, that's causing our flow meter to read when it's not supposed to read. Not that it's a lot, but when I tell you a value of 0.1 and it fluctuates every couple seconds. So I want it to be perfect. That valve needs to be, when it's closed, it should close. We should not have a value reading at all.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ron.
Okay, so the wastewater systems that we have is going to be both for LC Craig and the Park Hill Lagoon systems. And I just want to go over again on page number 4, highlighting the maintenance and capital activities for the second quarter for both LC Craig and Park Hill. Not that there was a lot, but still enough. Percentage of work orders completed. And then on page number 6, where it starts, is our performance assessment report, where it has our flows and our quality parameters for final effluent and raw as well. And I was just going to ask if there's any questions that anybody has for me for our wastewater system.
Councilor Canellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rod. Rod, I did have a couple of questions because I looked at this and as I was looking at it, I noticed that on page 12 and page 13, figures 9 and 10, the graphs seem to be significantly higher. Say in May, for example, in April, for the number 9 and number 10, each graph is higher throughout the first or throughout the second or the first quarter and into the second quarter. What's the explanation for that?
Oh, high flows.
I'm sorry?
High flows. April was a very, very wet month as well to start off. But it goes into May. So it takes a while for us to recover after a significant high rain event.
So then in June and July, it should be increasing. In June it did, but in July,
Yes. When it comes to our processes, that's what you're going to see.
okay. Because I've seen throughout the course of the year significantly higher than there was in all of 2022 for the first half. Okay.
Yeah, and if you get right into it as well, you'll see on the raw flow coming in, TKA and those values fluctuated even from last year. I was going to say that I expect that to be from our high velocity and camera work that we're doing. So we're cleaning our collection system. So those values, TKN and BOD, are going to be lower because we're getting through. We're going to be on year 3 of this program.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilor Daigle.
It's okay. My question relates to a report we're also going to see later, and it's to do with the development where we're saying we're being limited to 40 lots. Are we that tight on sewage capacity?
So both systems, LC Craig and Park Hill, are just
Elsie Craig, sorry.
LC Craig. So I know that there's an engineering company right now that's doing extensive work on that. I'm going to say that we are going to be, maybe not right this year or next year. There's going to be some houses that are going to be available, but as this development increases, the impression that I'm getting is that we are going to be at that stage where we're not going to have the capacity that we thought we would.
Thank you. Jaden, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, just to add the capacity restrictions that are built in for the Sauble Bluff subdivision, those are mostly pertaining to the William Street pumping station. Council will recall that we brought that forward to get that design expedited. That does tie into the plan, but those restrictions are directly related to the pumping station.
Okay. Any other questions? that portion? No? Carry on.
Okay, I'll hand it over to Sue.
Good evening, your worship, members of council and staff. Tonight I will be presenting the second quarter financials for the water and wastewater facilities. So first on the list is Elsa Craig. You'll see we were slightly higher in salaries and benefits by about $1,500. Chemicals were purchased in the second quarter. That brought us over budget for the quarter. However, that will even out by year end, so we should be right on target for that. Sludge haulage, you'll notice, is also significantly under budget, and that generally doesn't occur until Q3. So again, that should even out. We were also underspent in services as well as supplies and equipment. Next is the Park Hill Lagoon system. So most notable was the salaries and benefits. We were under budget, but again, that should even out over the next 2 quarters. Services came in close. We were under by about $33. And then supplies and equipment close at only over $39. So overall, we were under by about $5,800. And then the last is the water system. So again, under in salaries and benefits. However, we did see a number of third-party companies and to do work on maintenance and repairs. So that brought us over in the services and supplies and equipment. Overall, for the project, we came in roughly over by about $5,100. So in summary, for the 3 projects together, we're looking good for the end of Q2. We're under by approximately $8,500, and just a note, for Q1, we were under by about $6,700. So we're up a little bit from Q1.
Thank you. Is there, the third party, is a lot of that on bringing people in for repairs on like water line repairs? Is that most of them are?
Yes, also the water tankers for these shutdowns, there was a 12-hour that we had there as well. And then there was been some work at the Mount Carmel Reservoir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the financials for Aqua? Seeing none, thank you very much. Once again,
Thank you.
Thank you.
have a good evening. Our next item is department reports, and our first one is our bylaw enforcement for North Middlesex, and we're having Officer Keith Arnold come in, and the owner, Ed Pimentel, is coming up as well. Going to present this in person. We appreciate that.
Your worship, members of council, staff members, thank you for having us today. We're going to be here representing our biannual report. I'm going to take this opportunity to speak a little bit about the company. I'm the president and managing director of Tenant Security Group. We are a small company. We have approximately equivalent of 5 full-time bylaw officers. We have about 4 part-time bylaw officers. We originate from Lucan. And I think our first contract, I incorporated back in 2000. And our first contract was doing COVID screening at our local communities. So that went well without a hitch. But my intent all along with this company was to support lower tier municipalities in terms of bylaw enforcement, public safety kind of initiatives. So I know West Perth at one point issued an RFP for a bylaw. And so I submitted the RFP, and I was successful as a company. So from that point on, we did a good job. We're still there. We grew, we expanded rapidly. Right now we're up to 14 municipalities. We have a presence in Huron County, Middlesex County, Elgin County, and Perth County. And so we have 5 highly marked vehicles. I'm sure you've seen our car around the municipality here. And again, I just wanted to introduce myself so you know who I was, a little bit about the company, and we are still growing as a company. And I know that Keith's here, who is our assigned bylaw officer for North Middlesex. He's going to present the biannual report.
Your worship, members of council, my name is Keith. I am the designated bylaw officer for North Middlesex. What I'm going to be presenting to you today is the annual bylaw report. A little bit about myself. I have a little bit of a background in the law enforcement industry. I attended police foundations at Hancock College, as well as attending Western University for criminology and psychology. I also took a bylaw enforcement course at Fanshawe College. From there, I worked at Fanshawe College as a security guard for 3.5 years, where I gained experience, eventually becoming the supervisor. And as of June, the end of June of this calendar year, I have been working with Tenant Security Services, primarily in North Middlesex, as well as St. Mary's, Blue Water, and I also do the Asaba Bayfield conservation areas. What I'm going to be discussing with you is some statistics, overall statistics in regards to requests for bylaw, the overall numbers in terms of that, as well as the different types of calls. And then I will be moving into a little bit about parking, and then answering any questions that you may have for myself or for Ed. So if you pay your attention, I'm not sure if everybody has a copy of this in front of them. If you pay your attention to the first graph here, bar graph, it outlines requests for enforcement from late June to the end of August. What we saw was a substantial increase in calls in the month of August. Largely, I believe that was due to the fact of the climate and the overall rain, for example. Overall, in August, we received 32 calls for request compared to 19 in July, as well as 14 in June. Moving on into the different types of calls for request. So a large majority of the calls for request have been tidy yard bylaw. Again, largely due to the climate in the summer months, overgrowing grass and weeds and things like that. One other notable section in this graph is the animal control portion of it. We have seen a significant increase in compared to previous years in this section, specifically calls such as dangerous dog designation orders, dogs off leash, feral cats, as well as the annual kennel inspections. The overall trend within these two graphs is the majority of requests do continue to be tidy yard bylaw. And I think that a large increase in the month of August has been due to the fact of a consistent officer presence within the community. Moving on into a little bit about parking. So obviously throughout the summer months, there was construction ongoing in the Main Street, which I believe led to a bigger increase in cars parking on side streets. From a bylaw perspective, the main approach would be to educate the public, ensure safety, making sure that residents know where to park, when they can park there, and only issuing tickets when absolutely necessary. This concludes, I've also added some of the different organizations that I've collaborated with for you to read over, as well as some administration review for your reference as well. So that concludes the report, and if there's any questions for myself or for Ed.
Thank you, Keith. Questions from council? Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Thank you for your report. I've been looking forward to it. And I read it. I think it was great interest. It's a good report. I do have a question though on the tidy yards. As you say, it looks like 71% of your activities are around tidy yards. What's the outcome of these? Like, is there any follow through? Do the people comply with your request? Is there enforcement? What happens?
So I would say, I don't know the actual number, but I would say approximately 75% we obtain verbal compliance. That's just me going in and telling you, explaining to you what needs to be done in terms of the tidy yard bylaw. Should we not get verbal compliance, what happens is I would issue a notice of remedy, which in turn would give the municipality the right to attend and clean up the property should they fail to do so.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to add that I really appreciated your education around parking as opposed to enforcement. I think has been very helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And with that said, I think it's been a great opportunity for me to build relationships within the community as well, and just getting out and speaking with people as well.
I actually have one more question. I just looked at my notes. When I was listening to your training, and it was quite impressive. Through that training, and because of the nature of what you do, did you take any training for the de-escalation of aggression or the diffusion of hostility?
I haven't taken a specific course to that. I've been included in use of force training when I worked at Fanshawe, where there was a subsection within that program where we did do verbal de-escalation and things like that.
It may be helpful to talk to your boss to see if you can get that, just in case.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Other questions? Counselor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, I appreciate the report as my fellow counselor. Just one question. I'm curious where the majority of your calls occur in terms of our community. Are they mostly in our two urban centers?
Through your worship, yes, I would say that they are. Majority of them being in Park Hill, and then secondary to that, the Council Craig.
Okay, follow up to that? No? Other questions? No other questions. Hard to believe, isn't it? Anyways, thank you very much. It's a good report. It's a straightforward report. Appreciate you coming here and doing this. And sir, I thank you for supplying this because it's nice to see the same face somewhere. And I think that's where we have residents sometimes, if you're not seeing the same person, you know, I wasn't talking to you last time and I've heard nothing but good things about you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Worship, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is, we need a motion to receive that report. Councilor Daigle, Deputy Mayor Hodgins, all in favor? Carried. I can't see if Councilor Keel has a question. Can you get that from him? Okay, so if I miss that, would you let me know, please? All right, thank you. Our next item is the report from, I think Carolyn's going to deliver this report on the hours of work and overtime policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report was done by our Executive Assistant HR Coordinator, but I'm providing it to you tonight on her behalf. And it's actually on behalf of the committee, the policy committee that sat on September the 6th earlier this month. With regards to an update to a policy, I would say, an amendment to a compensation management policy. And it's specifically to do with hours of work and overtime policies. The committee reviewed it from the perspective of defining what the senior management team was, compensating the senior management team on an equal basis, and defining what the compensation would be for work outside the regular hours of work for the senior management and non-union positions. So this was considered by the committee, and the amendments are as outlined in the report. And basically, I'll just outline that for you. Specifically, all of the hours would be consistent at 40 hours for all of the senior management team. Compensation was determined based on the hours of work outside of the normal workday for those attending council meetings. So the list of the management staff that need to attend those are there. And then looking at the overtime policy in a general way as well. So I'm sure that any member of the committee would be happy to answer any questions. I am just the face for it tonight, but I'm sure that they would all be available to answer questions.
Questions from council? Chuck, is there anything you'd like to add as the chair of the committee going forward?
No, I think it was well presented.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Irwin, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one. Could you quickly take us through how this particular policy differs from what we currently? Where are the areas of difference?
If I may, Your Worship, I will go through them. I do have both the old and new policies in front of me. Primarily, it's outlining the positions. For the first section, it's outlining the positions that will be 40 hours versus 35. So the positions moving into the 40-hour-a-week realm are listed, which are adding the treasurer, fire chief, and clerk into those the 40-hour group. Also, it's adding to it under the 35 because we do have some positions that were not included in the original policy. Tax collector and drainage superintendent, so they're listed under the 35. Then in the next section, it was compensation for hours beyond the normal workday and determining which bands would be included within the 2 weeks given for additional compensation as far as 2 weeks in lieu of overtime versus 1 week. So in bands 9 to 13 would be compensated with 2 weeks, and the others would be compensated with 1 week. And beyond that, I'm just going to continue on. And then how overtime would be determined going forward was retained pretty much consistent as far as how they would bank hours for non-union positions. It was just outlined more clearly, quite frankly.
Okay, a follow-up?
Yes, your worship, just one additional question. And I'm curious about this. And so how does this policy in front of us compare to other municipalities in the surrounding communities? How do we stack up against our sister municipalities with this proposal?
I will comment to this only from my own experience. I haven't done that review. I'm not sure if the committee before my arrival did do that review. Certainly in my past experience, when you're dealing with time beyond the normal workday, that's handled in many different ways in municipalities, everything from overtime to time in lieu to per diem, similar to what council does. All of those are done. I've seen all of those things. As far as hours of work by senior members of staff, I've seen that done a variety of different ways as well. I've seen a split similar to what we have currently, 35 versus 40. I've seen it all at one level, all at 35 or all at 40. And I've also seen it done just basically on a salary basis as well, not based on a salary basis, so that it's based on the job necessities for each week, not based on an hourly basis. So how we compare to all the rest is that we are doing one of those ways, but there is a variety of different ways.
I would make comment if I can to that. Normally from what we saw or have seen in the past, that it's either based on 35 for all of, or it's based on 40, not half and half. You know, and that's where we were at before, was some were based on 40, some based on 35. Okay, follow up, go ahead.
No, I just to address your comment, your worship, to you. I appreciate that. I think the principle of fairness is very important. And I also think that having a policy that enhances retention is very important for our community as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. So if I understand this correctly, then flex time will be done away with?
Flex time as it applies to non-union staff generally, or other staff, it will be unchanged. This is how we deal with it for the senior management team.
Right, so the senior management team, primarily this is around council, as I understand it,
Right.
and activities that take beyond your working hours outside of the community. So then those individuals will no longer have flex time, is that correct?
Right, we would get the time in lieu of the additional hours we put in.
So just theoretically speaking, and because I need to know the answer, I noticed that if you attend less than 50% of council meetings, you get 1 week, correct?
Correct.
So if you attend one council meeting, you get a week?
Well, I would suggest that from our senior management team, we have all of them attend far more than one council meeting.
And I think so too, but just for clarification.
That would be In the letter of how it's written, yes, but I would suspect and would certainly require from the CAO's chair that we have senior staff members attending far more than one council.
Right, but members of the public see those too, and then when I get asked that question, I need to give them an answer.
Yes, so if you're at a level now, certainly wouldn't, I know that council meetings are what are listed, but we all know there are committee meetings and other meetings outside the normal hours of the workday, and they are expected to attend some of those as well. We are being rated based on council meetings, but a lot of other meetings as well.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I would think, Councillor Nelson, if that would ever be the case, I would expect the CAO to look at that and handle that in an appropriate way. And if not, I'm sure council will talk with the CAO if they have a concern with it. Yes, I do see your point.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? No, seeing none, we have a recommended motion in front of us that council approve the compensation management overtime meeting time policy as amended and recommended by the policy committee effective September 23rd, 23. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda, in favor. Carried. Thank you. And I can't see if Councillor Keogh, I would ask John, if you're listening, if you put your hand up in favor or opposed, that way we can record your vote. Okay, for going forward. That was carried. Thank you. We do have a report from the drainage superintendent. So I think Jaden, you're doing that. And that's request for improvement to the Huidong Horde drainage works.
Okay, through the chair, this is a municipal drain request for improvement. Staff received the notice of request for drain major improvement on August 31st, 2023. While on site for another drain on-site meeting. The owner is requesting to improve the drainage works on concession ABCR Lot 23, former Township of East Williams, as water ponds in its field. The existing drain is tile, and the current drain report was written by CB Corbett & Co. Limited, dated April 15, 1969. The proposed motion and recommendation before council is that council receive the notice of request for drain improvement for the Huidong Horde drainage works under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and that council appoints R. Dobbin Engineering Inc. as engineer to the Huidong Horde drainage works project.
Questions for Jaden on that? No questions. We have a recommendation in front of us to receive notice of request for drain improvement for the Huidong Horde drain works under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and the council appoints R. Dobbin Engineering. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Cornelison. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next report is from our fire chief, fire master plan.
Worship, members of council, what you have in front of you is the recommendation to award the fire master plan and community risk assessment to emergency management group. The amount of the contract is listed there. It's fairly straightforward. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Councillor Cornelison?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Chief Van Hoodle, I want to thank you for forwarding the other information forward to me. I read it with a great deal of interest, and certainly this whole recommendation makes far more sense now that I've had an opportunity to see that. Thank you very much.
Sorry, other questions? Council, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Daigle and Councillor Cornelison. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next report is from our chief building official, Arnie Martin. And Arnie, if you want to come up. Welcome.
Good evening, council. Through the mayor, thank you for having me tonight. I am excited to be here today to present to council a new building bylaw for consideration. Under the authority of the Building Code Act, a municipality may pass a building bylaw. The building bylaw looks at a number of items, sort of the rules of the game for construction in your municipality. Types of permits, required drawings, forms, fees and penalties, types of inspections that we do, site fencing. A number of things are included in your building bylaw. In 2013, North Middlesex Council passed the current building bylaw. Since 2013, there's been a number of changes in the building code and the building industry that really should be reflected in the new bylaw. A number of these are outlined here. Sorry, so the current building bylaw requires 2 sets of paper drawings. Currently in North Middlesex, we're using e-permitting primarily. So we should reflect that in the new building bylaw. We've introduced set fines to the building bylaw. So if people are building without a permit or occupancy or occupying buildings without occupancy permits, then there are penalties for that we're introducing through this bylaw. We're introducing a section just recognizing remote inspections. And it's a reality in the industry that if we do an inspection and there's something that's outstanding, a failure for some reason, say an installation inspection on a Friday afternoon, and there's something that we can't pass, that we would accept a picture from the builder later on Friday so we can pass an installation inspection and they can drywall on the weekend. I've had some questions. We've taken this bylaw to a few councils already, and I've had some questions about the intent of remote inspections. And it's never our intention for a remote inspection to replace an in-person primary inspection, but it's a great tool to be used if we can help them move along from a deficiency that's been seen. We can send us a picture, we can sign off and then continue on. It's also helped during COVID where we've done, we've exchanged pictures, we've had video calls on sites, sort of a reality of the industry that this happens, but it's been recommended to chief building officials that we update our building bylaw just to recognize them. We've also included sections in your building bylaw. You outline what's required, the type of attachments, the types of drawings. In this, we've included a section regarding an evaluation of grading, groundwater if required, impacts of drainage on neighboring properties, infrastructure downstream. It's just a number of things that we can look a little bit beyond the property to see the impact of that development if we need to. So in 2021, Middlesex Center, we expanded our service agreement with the Township of Middle to include North Middlesex, Adelaide, Metcalfe, Southwest Middlesex. And each of these municipalities has its own unique building bylaw. So staff found it important that we have a consistent building bylaw since we do inspections in all 5 municipalities. So we've reviewed the bylaw that council's considering today with county solicitor. And we find that it's most appropriate for the 5 municipalities to adopt that one bylaw. Now, before the meeting today, I really appreciate it. I had an inquiry from a member of council about, what examples, what physical changes are there from our current building bylaw to what we're recommending. So I appreciate that question. And I've gone over just a few examples of what we're introducing in this bylaw versus what we didn't have or what we should have had. Currently, the current building bylaw with illegal buildings, somebody starts without a permit, the current building bylaw requires the fees to be doubled up to $1,000. So if your building permit typically costs you $750 and you're found starting without a permit, you have to get a permit and you pay double, you pay $1,500. That's in the current bylaw. We're not recommending continuing with that penalty. It's questionable whether that's really enforceable across the province. So if we think a penalty is required, we would go to our set fine and they'd get a charge for building without a permit rather than a doubling of the fees. We've updated a list of drawings. It's not quite as specific in the current building bylaw. We've provided a bit more specifics of the types of drawings that are required. Sewage systems are not in your current building bylaw, so we've included a section on septic systems. The forms have changed slightly from the forms that are in the current bylaw. Your chief building official's name, Vic's name, is in the current building bylaw. It's posted on your website, so you really shouldn't identify staff names in bylaws. The building code some time ago required that a code of conduct for your building officials be included in the bylaw. Your current building bylaw does not have a code of conduct, so we've included that with this. The current building bylaw accepts drawings on cloth. Believe it or not, you can submit your drawings on paper or on cloth. And today's standards, we wouldn't accept cloth for building permit applications. And with regards to pool permits, your building bylaw is silent on pool permits, but your pool bylaw says you shall obtain a building permit for a swimming pool fence and a swimming pool. So at some point that has evolved to getting your building permit, but the building bylaw wasn't updated to reflect that. That's simply in your swimming pool fence bylaw. So this is sort of an updating of some of your current bylaws. But it seems that this bylaw, the current bylaw, is very similar generally to the others in the county. The 5 bylaws we're replacing were all passed sometime between 2011 and 2014. So they're very similar. I suspect that a lot of them use the same base and they went their own way. Middlesex Center at the time was doing building inspections for Luke and Biddulph. So we generally have the same building bylaw, and this is very similar to what we currently have, but it has been updated for those items I mentioned earlier. But this is to get a bit more specific for everyone and kind of bring it up to current standards. So I think that's my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, questions from council? Councillor Knowlton?
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Thank you for your report. I enjoyed reading it. I have a question for you, and it's not as it relates to this particularly, but in terms of general building permits being issued. And I've had a number of calls from very frustrated individuals who have had troubles obtaining a permit. And they would tell me that, okay, that there's an issue that they had to comply with, which they did, and then there was another issue and another issue, but not all the issues were addressed at the same time. And I was wondering if you could help me understand the rationale for that.
Sure. Through the mayor, that's a great question. And sometimes we're darned if we do and darned if we don't. If somebody sends us a drawing and say, can you have a quick look at this and see if it's what we need? So sometimes we'll do that and we'll do a quick look and we'll say, well, you need this, you need that, the other thing. And then they'll submit it as an application and we'll do a review, and it's a bit more of a specific review. That has happened from time to time. It could be that the second time we realize, wait, you need a conservation authority approval as well. And there's some criticism, well, why didn't you tell me that the first time? But typically we frown upon and changing things afterwards. Where you're going there. Ideally, I tell the guys when you do a plans review, you do it once. You give your list of deficiencies, and hopefully that's enough. If for some reason we miss something, and I can look at a framing inspection as well. One of our inspectors will come out, they'll do a framing inspection. They'll give you a list of 10 items. Another inspector comes and does a re-inspection and they see something. They might add a couple more deficiencies, and that's frustrating to the builder as well. But we want things built right and safe. So if the first inspector doesn't find everything, it's not really that person's fault. It's just they didn't see it all. So ultimately, we're looking for compliance, and whether it's at permit issuance stage or during an inspection, we do our best to get it all on one list. But if something is found later on, then unfortunately we have to make sure it's done right.
Other questions? No other questions? I really appreciate your list of the main changes. Do you find that with the doing the online permits, that the developers and the people who are building all the time, they really like the process, but the one-timers like myself who want to build a garage, a shed, or something like that, that's where the most help is, or the most frustrating for people is? Like, is that what you're finding on that?
Yeah, through the merit, exactly. The builders really like it. The one-timers, it's tricky. It's like going on to Amazon one time in your life. I want to buy something on Amazon. You have to figure it out, right? We do the best we can to help people through it. If they call us, we'll help them step through it. If they want to apply on paper, they can still submit the paper drawings in the office and do it the old-fashioned way. Staff here behind the scenes, we will put it in cloud permit and process it that way. But if they'd rather call us for inspections and get a paper copy back, we will provide that to them, no problem.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? Thanks, Arnie. Right now we have recommended motion that we pass this report, for information, and that later we'll be passing a bylaw. Moved by Councilor Irwin, seconded by Councilor Nerda, all in carry. Thank you. Thanks, Arnie. Thank you very much. Passing of accounts. Estelle. Maybe we can make an adjustment here for another meeting that we actually have more space for staff. Yeah, I agree.
companies that provide office equipment. It's never quick, unfortunately, since COVID. But once those are put in, I'm certain we'll have a spot for all members of senior staff. But in the meantime, certainly we can try to fit everybody in.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Estelle, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses for the period of August 26th through to September 13th, totaling $1,645,580.05. I have not received any questions via email, so I now open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Questions? Councillor Knellison.
Just thank you. My question is for the director, the manager of infrastructure. In looking through the accounts, I saw that there was a payment to Sabo Bayfield for planning reviews. Is that billed to the applicants or is that a municipal expense?
So thank you through the chair and thank you for the question. Currently that is, it's not billed back to the applicant. That's a municipal expense and it is for, I'm just pulling up that invoice. It is for review for planning applications, severances, several of them. So there is a fee that applies there and currently we're not billing that back to the applicant. But I think we're going to have a look and talk with ABCA to see whether that's something that we should be doing. So thank you for your question and observation.
Well, thank you. And just to expand on that, I do believe that the Sabo Bayfield, as I recall at a previous meeting, that my understanding was that North Middlesex was one of the only municipalities that actually did bill the applicant as opposed to not. So I was kind of surprised to hear that. Thank you.
If I may add, Your Worship, this is fairly new that ABCA is invoicing us for these planning reviews. So it's still unclear as to how it should be treated, but we will definitely look into it to see if it can become cost recovery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions on our accounts? No other questions? Wow, you're getting away easy this time, aren't you? That was more of a comment, I think, than a question.
Duly noted.
I'll admit, I like it. I don't mind it at all. I find it easy to follow. Did you have a question for Councillor Daigle? Oh, you're moving the report? Moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Councillor Irwin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Estelle. Committee reports. Lake Huron Primary. John's not able. ABCA.
Meeting
Councillor
tomorrow.
Knowles. Meet tomorrow? Any questions for ABCA? Blue Water Recycling is John, because he's just listening in, correct? Okay. We'll get it at the next meeting. Economic Development,
Nothing to report at this time.
Local School Advisory.
We had our inaugural meeting last Thursday, Your Worship. Minutes will be circulated at the next council meeting. Deputy Mayor Hutchins was there. I don't know if you have anything you want to call the inaugural meeting.
Yes, I do. Yes, thank you, Councillor, to Mayor. Yeah, I thought it was a well-run meeting. I was for our first inaugural getting off the feet at, from December and actually, but there was a lot of good questions. I won't say we had Arlene on the hot seat. Yeah, not us, but just our people, volunteers and our people that were appointed to this committee asked her a lot of good questions. And going forward, like I said, I hope we get some positive results going out of our 4-year term. So I'm at the way wet. I think our CEO Carolyn for setting in to take the minutes.
I'll have more to say and the deputy mayor next meeting minutes. But needless to say, the changes the province are proposing will have significant potential impact to our government, for our municipality, what we do and potentially even what we do.
Agreed. There's a lot of things going forward here. Councillor Knellison, you had a question?
Yes, I do. What was the public buy-in like? Was there a good representation from the public?
every school sent a home and school or a school council or both representative to the meeting. So we had a very good turnout. Excellent.
That's good to hear. Any other questions? Any other questions for Councilor Irwin? Good to hear. Good to see that it's on the go. Recreation Committee? Okay, nothing to add. Any questions for the Rec Committee? Policy Review Committee, you can, we have some recommendations here. Who's? I'll take that. I guess I am. Compensation Management Overtime Meeting Time Policy.
That was in the report.
Yeah.
Your worship.
Oh, it's just, is there any, I'm waiting for comments. Messaging on electronic signage and banners policy. There's a recommended motion that council receive and adopt the new version of messaging on the electronic signage and banner policy as recommended by the policy committee. Is there questions on that one?
I had a potential question, Your Worship, but I can't get the stupid report to come up here. So my question was around the new sign for Elsa. And I think we've listed in terms of order of importance who has the ability to put what on the sign. And I know that the Yale Town Hall uses the current sign a lot. And my question was, how is that going to fit into their priority with ours? And I wish the report would come up, but it's frozen. So I can look at it.
I don't know if staff want to answer that. I would say I'm hoping that it's a quicker turnaround and that it goes on the sign every bit as quickly and nobody has to climb that ladder and put it on the sign. So I really think that if it's considered a legitimate message, that it will go up on the sign pretty quickly. But as far as, is that the fairest way to say it?
I would agree with you. I would suggest that it's going to be a kind of a seamless process going forward.
Okay.
Yes, Your Worship.
We have a recommendation or
Let it go.
looking for a mover on that. Deputy Mayor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Daigle. In favor? Carried. Thank you. The next one is the birth, illness, and memorial donation policy. And we have a recommended motion that council receive and adopt the new version of the birth, illness, and memorial donation policy. Councillor Daigle?
The changes we were making were basically so it was an even playing field across the road. It wasn't $50 for this, $25 for this. We made it a straight $100 across the board and makes it a lot easier for staff and takes care of the situation. So I will move that we.
And it does clarify exactly, you know, what we're doing that for. You are making that a motion and a seconder. Councillor Nerda, seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Community Development Fund Policy. Do you want to speak to Councillor Daigle?
Sure, I will. We were, again, just clarifying, taking out two sections and redistributing the same money to other areas. In the end, budget wise, it was the same dollars. It was just clarifying two items that we hadn't used before and removing them.
And the reasoning for it was, I think when we've been doing it the last couple of years, Estelle will, I think, agree with that too. There was some monies that we weren't giving out. It was always so much asked for out of one side of it. And so this is to clarify. Estelle, do you want to add to that?
Through you, Your Worship, there was 5 components of the Community Development Fund. 2 of the components, which were multi-year projects and emergency funds, had not been used, and they totaled $3,000 of the $93 assigned on an annual basis. And we just redistributed those $3,000 since the cash assistance and the vibrancy fund. And the third one, I forget, it's eluding me which the other one is, but we redistributed the $3,000 to the other 3 components just to, because those are always, or more often than not, the applications exceed the amount of the budget. So we just included the $3,000 in those 3 other components.
And I think this is a policy that's kind of a live policy. If as things evolve or the requests change, the policy should keep up to date. Any other questions on this? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Nerda, seconded. Councillor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the final one is the delegation of powers and duties policy. Questions on that? No questions? All right, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Daigle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Opposed? No? Okay. Fire Committee. Adrian, you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Rob. The fire committee did meet last Thursday. And we did have a tour of our new facility, which is progressing along nicely, and looking forward to the grand opening coming up in the near future. The chief did share with us that the agreement with Lambton Shores has been deferred again. And we did get a report on the fire engines, which the costs for maintaining them has increased somewhat, but it's not certainly not overwhelming. I think that what the highlight, I believe, of our meeting was possibly the fact that we are going to establish a committee for the replacement to the build of the new fire truck. And against better judgment, I was assigned to that committee, so I will be sitting on it. And we got a report from the chief on motor vehicle accidents. But what I think is important is that the chief mentioned that there will be a memorial with the North Middlesex Fires Association for firefighters who have passed away. It'll be coming up in the near future, and will take place at the cemetery here in Hill. And so certainly we're all encouraged to attend, and I know the committee will be attending, and encourage all members of council who are able to come. We did review and discuss the master plan, some discussions around the Alice Creek Fire Station. And last but not least, we did agree to have the portraits of our firefighters taken, since it's been 20 years, and some of them have aged a little bit over that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Eugene. I'm hoping that the chief will provide more information on that memorial for all of council. Yeah, that is. So any questions on the fire committee? That was a busy meeting. Aqua Client Advisory Board.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That advisory committee has not been sitting frequently through COVID, but has been reestablished. And it's during my meeting with Aqua, I requested to be put on the board. I guess our former CAO, Jonathan, was on the committee, so they are more than happy to include me. Their meetings, I understand, do take place quarterly, with one meeting in person, the other 3 virtual. So I look forward to our first meeting. I haven't received the date of that yet, but I'll update council when I do.
All right. Correspondence. We have one item. Town of Grimsby, guaranteed livable income.
I'd like. Survive on $763 a month. I don't think that's a livable income.
All right. Thank you. We have a motion to support it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Your wish is granted, Councillor Canellis. Other and urgent business. First, before you start on this, Jaden, I want to congratulate you for getting this done. I know you did a lot of extra last minute footwork on this to make this happen. And then kudos to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and for you. So we are bringing forward 2 agreements to council. They were late additions to the agenda that were added. One is the subdivision agreement for phase 1 of the Asable Bluff subdivision. That's the large subdivision that has been under construction in Alice Craig the last several months. Council may recall that we did execute a pre-servicing agreement that allowed the developer to proceed with getting the servicing installed, and they've made great progress on that. And they are eager to take the next step with starting to get foundations in the ground. And so we've As the mayor mentioned, we've been working hard to get the subdivision agreement finalized. So it is, it's now been finalized, and the second agreement being brought forward to this meeting is the pre-servicing agreement, which is for the medium density block within phase 1 of the subdivision, and that's in the northeast quadrant of the site. And that includes 22 townhouse units. So it's also a pre-servicing agreement, which allows them to proceed with getting the servicing in the ground. They want to get that going immediately following execution of this agreement to get it in before the winter. And then there will be one more agreement forthcoming for that site plan for that townhouse block. The agreement is, it's a large agreement, and I can certainly take any questions on it. Just to provide a couple high level highlights on it. This agreement does authorize the subdivider to proceed with 40 single detached dwellings at this time, which is just a portion of the phase 1 lands. And that's just because the municipality doesn't want to over allocate capacity, noting those constraints we have at the William Street pumping station. Some other highlights include, or one other thing I'd like to bring to council's attention. There was one clause that was added. It is shown on the agreement that is attached to the council agenda, but it wasn't on the agreement that was circulated previously. That is clause number 94, and it pertains to farming practices that are occurring adjacent to the subdivision lands. So there's a warning clause that has to be given to purchasers of lots, so they're aware that there's farming practices ongoing. Another highlight that the agreement has, there's provision for 10 premature building permits to be authorized. And that allows the developer to proceed with up to 10 building permits in advance of meeting the requirements for getting full building permits. So they're allowed to start on those pretty much right away. There are clauses that ensure general maintenance of the lands to ensure that it is maintained neat and tidy, and grasses cut and weeds are maintained. There's provisions for assumption of the works, ultimately inspections. But if there's any questions, I can certainly answer. Thank you.
Questions from council? Councillor Daigle.
Just a clarification, we're talking about a block for the townhouses, I think you called them. And then the 40 permitted single family detached, those are two separate areas.
That's correct. Yeah, the townhouse blocks are not included within the phase 1 subdivision agreement. That will be a subsequent agreement that comes. The pre-servicing agreement that's attached to the agenda pertains to the pre-servicing for that block.
Okay. Councillor Knellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Jaden, I listened with interest when you made mention of the weed control, because, you know, as we have here, seen up here in West Park Street, that weed control is not always a high priority for some of our developers. Will that be an improvement in this particular development from what we see here?
Yes, we'll certainly stay on top of the developer, and the subdivision agreement is very clear and wording, and it gives us that power to make sure that it is being maintained.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at this point, we don't have urban design guidelines for our community. However, there are some urban design or common features in the plan. Could we maybe go through them so I have a better understanding? I know there's some in terms of lighting, landscaping, fencing, any others aspects?
Through Your Worship, that's correct. The urban design features of the individual lot or the houses themselves isn't addressed through the subdivision agreement, but there are landscaping plans that does include a tree planting plan within the right of ways, fencing, as the councillor mentioned. There is also There's going to be a pathway that goes around the stormwater management pond. So those features, those design features are addressed for the municipal right-of-way space, but not those private blocks, so urban design, as you say.
Follow up?
Has there been any additional consideration, growth or shrinking of the designated parkland that we had seen originally, or is it the same as what we had saw in the original draft subdivision?
Through your worship, it is consistent with what was in the draft plan. It's a parquet block up in the north portion of the site. So there is a cash in lieu of parkland component to this, because I believe that's less than the 5% required.
Right. No other questions at this time? We have a recommendation in front of us. Mover, Counselor Irwin, Counselor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Jaden. I know that we do have, for those townhouse development, we do have people who are looking to move, to downsize in our community. It's nice to have some things happen that people can stay in the community when they want to downsize, because that hasn't happened in the past. So we have that in Park Hill here now. I know we need more, but we do have that. And so it's good to see that happen. Deferred items from the previous meeting. The first one is, oh, sorry.
I'd like to just, under other urgent business.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I don't know if anybody's looked as they come in, our sign out front is not working. It's still advertising Park Hill Fair and it can't be reached. And my knowledge so far, the county IT hasn't responded. I've heard that they're talking about a software upgrade for next year. But does that mean we're going to be advertising Park Hill Fair until then? We needed it to look good. I mean, if we're going to have electronic signs, they have to be accurate.
Agreed. Is there, who wants to speak to that? Who has an update on that? Brandon?
Yeah, so county IT actually emailed back today they want us to try something else to try and reset it. Currently, we've tried about 3 different things that we were hopeful would reset it and give us communication back, and we've just been unsuccessful so far. They did mention that in the future that software replacement is recommended for next year, but I don't believe that's to do with the sign as much as it is to how we access the sign. We access it through a separate portal when you access it.
So, but to be clear, so does that mean we're waiting till next year to do that sign?
No, we are trying to find the fix now.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thanks. Great point brought up. Counselor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 items. The first one is I'd like to let council know that it was a very successful meeting on Thursday, inaugural meeting in the village of Elsa Craig, begin planning for the 150th. And I want to thank our coordinator of economic development communications, had a big role in organizing that meeting. Over 20 individuals came out, a dozen different groups represented, and there's a meeting in 2 weeks. So I think I think there's some great things being planned for that particular event, and we'll wait for minutes to come out. The second is I have a question for the manager of infrastructure in regards to an issue we brought forward a few months ago, and that was drainage issues around the small subdivision on Queen Street North and drainage into the existing residential properties on Church Street and Rabbitwood.
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, to the counselor. Yeah, council may recall that with the very, very wet spring we had, there were a lot of drainage issues throughout the municipality, but certainly we saw it in that area north of Queen Street, where that new development area backs onto the existing homes. At that time, we did talk to the developer and their engineer, and a site review was completed that did note there were deficiencies with the grading of the site and the drainage of the site, as well as the erosion and sediment control. So there was corrective action taken at that time. And we are continuing to review this further because the the medium density lands to the rear of the site, which is most of the area that abuts the existing neighborhood. That site still is under design, and we still are going through the engineering. So we have raised those concerns and making sure that they are being addressed through the design to make sure there is proper provision for drainage through that design. So working with the developer and their engineer, and once that design does get finalized, we will then set up a site plan agreement for that medium density development, and we'll ensure that there are provisions in there as well that deal with the drainage matters to make sure it is functioning.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Just one thing there, the email come, I believe yesterday. I just want to make comment on one thing, there was a celebration donation made by Pesky and Associates on our 20th anniversary. I know they asked some of the councilors here for suggestions, but I just want to compliment Councilor Nerda suggesting Big Brothers, Big Sisters of South Huron. I thought that was a very good suggestion, and I see it's been put forward to be the recipient of this. So I just wanted to mention that tonight.
You want to speak to that, Councillor Nerda?
I think it's a great organization to donate to, or at least put forward. I mean, most people don't know that the South Huron Big Brother Sisters does service this area. So Parkhill and Elsie Crag and surrounding communities all the way up to Lucan, I believe. So it is a good community that would benefit greatly from a $2,000 donation.
Great. Well said, Councillor. Other comments? Councillor Daigle, you have one more?
One other item, it wasn't carried forward under deferred items, and that's to do with the gas line that we've been discussing that goes along 81. We're hoping to go from Corbett down to Murray. And we have now found that we did do a submission in 2020, I think it was, and we were turned down. The people there still are obviously wanting it. There is a new Enbridge proposal. They're asking for proposals by December 15th for any expansion plans, among other things. And I'd like to see us put forward the same plans that we did that didn't make it the last time, and let the people get themselves together to be ready for this.
Okay. I don't
I'd
think,
like to make that as a motion.
do we need that as a motion? Okay. You're making that a motion?
I
We
would
have,
like to see that we prepare a submission to Enbridge for the proposals for the various lines within North Middlesex that we originally designated.
same as the 2020 proposal.
Yes, unless there's new areas to be added.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Irwin. Comments on it? No? All in favor? Carry. All right, any other business? I apologize, I skipped through it a little bit and I didn't mean to, but I was just so happy to see that site agreement come through. Okay, deferred items from previous meeting. North Middlesex surplus land. Carolyn, you're going to speak some to that.
To some degree, I know that this has been deferred for quite some time, and it's something that I will be working on. On the first part of it, I've already had some discussions with staff about bringing forward some lands with potential for residential and or affordable housing possibilities. So that may be coming forward shortly. We'll do a fuller intensive look at all the lands over the next number of months. But as you can well imagine, we have a lot of small pieces and larger pieces, but we'll certainly focus on those that can provide us with residential housing, because that seems to be the biggest push at the provincial level and the federal level. And hopefully we can realize some funding going forward with some of those lands. And I'll be bringing forward a fulsome report on that over the.
Any comments, questions for Carolyn on that? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be looking forward to that report because this is something I put on the agenda back in November 17th, 2021. And I know we've brought it up a few times over the years, so I'm going to be looking forward to it with interest. Don't forget Hungry Hollow.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Park Hill Sewage Lagoon, Jaden, you have,
Yes, through your worship, just a quick update on this one. Just wanted to let council know that in the coming weeks or in the month of October, we are going to proceed with doing a detailed survey of the lagoons. It's a sludge survey to get a completely accurate assessment of what sludge is in there, the composition of that sludge, and that information is going to give us a baseline and some information that we can use then to plan for capital projects in 2024. We are certainly still looking at desludging or dredging of that lagoon facility. So just wanted to let council, we're going to be doing that survey and we'll have more information once that's done.
okay. The next one I have to speak to would be 10.7, Bridge 34.
Through your worship, Bridge 34, that's New Ontario Road. Last meeting, we gave an update on that work. It was just finishing up. And I did just speak with the engineer, Street Associates, on that one. The structural work is completed. Thank Councillor Keogh for the points he brought up regarding the damaged railing and the loading of that bridge. So we did authorize the contractor that was finishing up that work to remove the railing, complete some repairs on it. So there is a section of that railing that has been removed and it's being repaired offsite currently. The bridge is still closed, but the engineer has advised us that structurally it is ready to be reopened. It's just that gap in the railing. So we're gonna work with our public works team to get that temporarily secured and look to get that reopened potentially by the end of this week. And we are continuing to further review the loading on that bridge. I know there's been some concerns with school buses that do cross it. So working with our engineer, we're just making sure that the loading is appropriate and we have the appropriate signs if we are going to be blocking off larger vehicles.
Any questions at the time? That's good to hear though, that's being opened. It's been closed for quite a while. The other one I have to speak on is 10.9, the official plan update.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did speak with county planning on this matter, and I was updated to be advised that in 2024, county will be looking at our official plan. I realize it's quite out of date and it needs to be done, so I definitely will be pushing that matter forward and looking forward to that being completed.
Any questions on that? I know that we have been deferred a couple of times because with the county working on this, we were sort of next in line. So yeah, so it's going into next year. And the last one is the budget committee appointments. And I've talked to most of you. I haven't been able to talk to Councillor Keogh, but he is online for us to hear. And so year one would be the mayor I'll be serving on all 3 years. But the first year will be Councillor Daigle and Deputy Mayor Hodgins. The next year will be Councillor Keogh and Councillor Nerda. And in the third year, Councillor Cornelison and Councillor Irwin. So that's the appointments that I have for them. Communication, including county council. We have a meeting next Tuesday. Councillor Cornelison.
Yes, has that serious issue, that critical incident that suspended last council meeting been resolved?
No. Bear with me on.
Where will you be meeting?
Pardon me?
Where will you be meeting if they're still flying around?
Well, we had a canceled meeting. And so, yeah. So that's all I can say right now.
Good luck.
Any other questions for the county other than the one I can't really answer right now? Okay, reading of the bylaws.
Thank you. We have bylaws 78, 82 for first and second reading.
First and second, Councillor Daigle, Deputy Mayor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried.
And then all bylaws for third and final.
Councillor Irwin, Councillor Daigle had his hand up. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Counselor Daigle, Counselor Nerda, all in favor?